Okay, so today what we are going to study is the labor supply. Okay, as I said, the last lecture, the labor supply, we will have 3 lectures. That's our plan. And labor supply is the beginning of the labor economics course. And as I said, it's in a way, it's an application of utility maximization theory to the labor market. So if you are already familiar with utility maximization, it should be relatively easy to follow, at least for the first part. Okay, our lecture, the order, there are 3 big titles. One is the labor force statistics. So I will talk about what kind of statistics exist, and more I will show you lots of statistics about Korean labor market, Korean labor force. Okay, so we will spend some time on the statistics and data, and then we will move on to the theory part. And the theory that we are going to learn is the work leisure choice model. So that is the we can say the workhorse of labor supply theory. Okay, it is very simple, easy to understand, and it's a straightforward application of utility maximization. But still, we can have lots of interesting implications from the model. So we will spend probably one whole lecture on this, and then we're going to move on to some applications, mostly about government policies, like welfare programs and tax, and some labor market regulations, and then a couple of extensions of the model about the life cycle labor supply and business cycle. Okay, so this is the outline of the lectures that we will go through for about three lectures. Okay, so this number 2 is, I mean, a lot of you probably already familiar with this model anyway. Okay, but still we are going through it quite thoroughly. Okay, first, labor force statistics. Okay, so in this case, in this part, we will see the bunch of statistics and probably some new terms you will learn. Okay, let's start with this. Okay, so these are the things, the categorization and basic statistics and types, labor utilization, hours of work. So we will just go through one by one. Okay. First, from the labor economics point of view, okay, the population, the people are categorized into, in the broadest term, into just 2 categories. Okay? So let me write it here, and then let's start with it. Okay, in this population, we are not just talking about the general population from, let's say, 0-year-old to 100-year-old. What we are interested in, only those who are 15 and above. Okay? So from the labor economics point of view, let's say up to age 14, they are not expected to work. Okay? So we cannot count them, okay, as the part of population we are interested in. Okay? So so let's think of a population 15 and above. So all of you are, hopefully, all of you should be, including myself, okay, should be in this population group. Okay? Probably some of your nieces and nephews and your younger brothers and little sisters are not in this group. Okay? Okay, so, and there are 2 categories. The first category, as you see here, is called labor force. Okay? And the other category, we will talk about it in a few minutes. Okay, so we have a labor force, and then the other name for labor force is economically active population. Okay? Basically, they mean same thing. Okay? We usually use the labor force because it's probably shorter. Okay? and in Korean, 경제활동인구. Okay? So you will hear this term in newspaper or in news report. Okay? Probably you already have heard it many times. Okay? So that's the labor force. Okay, who are the labor force? Labor force, there are two groups in the labor force. Okay? As it says, employed, unemployed. Okay? There are two groups. The simple dual, binary categorization, employed or unemployed. Okay, now things get a little more complicated, and who are employed and who are unemployed, we should know, right? So there must be a definition for the employed and the unemployed. Okay, what employed means? Okay, first thing is that when we count the population, conscripted, so those who do the military service, okay, or imprisoned, okay, in prison for crime or something, okay, they are not counted in this population. Okay, they are simply removed from the statistics. Okay. In some countries, actually, but in some countries, they count those in military service as the part of population. Okay, so it depends on, say, from country to country. Okay, but in this country, in Korea, we do not count those who are doing military service for duty. Okay, professional, say, military personnel are counted, but not those your friends who are, serving a country in military right now. They are not counted. Okay, a very small portion, so probably wouldn't matter much. Yeah, but sometimes when you look at the male and female differences, it matters, especially for young people. But for the whole, it takes little group, small group. So employed. So what we mean by employed? Okay, employed. Basically, employed primarily means working for pay or profit. Okay. For how long? For 1 hour or more in a week. So if you work for pay or profit just for 1 hour or more in a week, then you are considered employed. Okay? Got it? So let's say you have a part-time job. Okay? And let's say you work, 10 hours a week. And then you get paid for it. Then you are employed. Okay? So this is 1 hour or more, it seems very short, but actually this is an international standard. Most of the countries use this 1 hour as the minimum to count a person either employed or not employed. Okay? Okay, so that's one thing that's easy. So you have a job or you have a business. Okay? But there are certain people who are not paid exactly, but still working. For example, like working for family business without fixed pay. Let's say your father has a store, family store. So from time to time, you go to the store and help out your father. But you are not actually paid. Okay? Probably your father gives you, from time to time, some allowance, but not exactly that. We don't call it a wage, right, or pay. So for this type of case, okay, in Korea's by the Korean standard, if you work in that way for 18 hours or more a week, then you are employed, even if you don't have a fixed pay. But let's say you help out your father, let's say only during weekend. Let's say for, 5-6 hours a week, then you are not employed. Okay? So this, we call it unpaid family worker. Okay? Okay, for men, unpaid family worker is very small portion. But for women, actually it's a kind of substantial portion, because a lot of family business, the husband and wife, they work together, right? And then what usually happens is the husband is the owner of the store. Okay? So this person is actually working for profit. Okay? And then wife, quite often, is working for family business without fixed pay. So the wife is an unpaid family worker. Okay? And still employed because the wife works for long hours. Okay? Get it? So if you look at female statistics, you will see that there is a large proportion of women who are actually unpaid family worker. For men, it's very small. Okay, and the third group is the person who are not working at this moment, but who has a job and on a temporary leave because of illness or taking vacation or holidays, right? Or there is some labor disputes between employer and employees. So let's say there is a strike. Okay? Then the person is not currently working but having a job. Okay? Then this person is still employed. Okay? Questions? So primary, so when we say employed, basically means the first one, working for pay or profit. Okay? And then the others, we need it because actually the situations other than this actually happens in the real world. Okay, then who are unemployed? Okay, unemployed is not equal to not employed. Okay, so we have a specific definition for unemployed. Not employed are not necessarily unemployed. Okay, then what we mean by unemployed. Unemployed is not working for pay or profit, okay? Okay, so it's not employed. But there is a second condition. To be unemployed, this person should actively look for a job, okay, for the past 4 weeks. So if the person is not employed, then we check whether this person actually looked for a job for the past 4 weeks. Okay? And not only that looked for a job, but also being able to work as soon as a job is found. So this person is looking for a job and ready to work. Okay? So that's unemployed. Okay. Questions? So unemployed people sometimes called job seekers. Okay? Seeking a job. Seeking work. These people are unemployed. So there may be people who are not employed, but not looking for a job either. Then this person is not unemployed. This person is in different category. Okay? Questions? Okay. Then what is the other category? The other category. The definitions differ slightly from country to country. Okay? So if you look at, let's say, international statistics, you should be a little careful because the countries sometimes use different definitions. For example, in Korea's case, when they count the 15-year-old as a part of this group, but in some countries they count from 16, not 15. Some countries, they count it from 14. Okay? So depending on their education system, okay, sometimes they start at later age. Okay? So for example, like if there is a mandatory education, so by law, you should be in school. So that means what? This person should not be in the labor force. So if that's the case, then if the mandatory education is longer, then they start counting whether this person is in the labor force or not from, let's say, age 16. Okay? Makes sense. Huh? And so the less developed countries tend to have like 14 as the cutoff age. More developed countries like use 16. Okay, then the other one, which is here, is labor force. So the other group is just simply we call it not in the labor force. Okay, so that's the other. So not in the labor force, it's simple. Because this person is neither employed nor unemployed. Okay? So what does it mean? It means what? This person is not working because not employed. And this person is not doing what? Is not looking for a job or not ready to work. Okay? Not unable to work even if there is a job, or just not looking for work. Okay? Then this person, we call that person is not in the labor force. Okay? Okay, what kind of groups? Okay, the largest groups of people who are not in the labor force, there are two groups. One are students. Okay, so full-time students. A lot of you guys. Are you working for pay? Some of you maybe. Some of you have a part-time job. Then you are actually employed. Even if you're students, if you have a part-time job, as I said, work for 1 week, or 1 hour or longer in a week and get paid, you are employed. Because how do they count it is that when they categorize, when they make the statistics, the first thing they look at is whether you are employed or not. Okay? So that's how they don't look at first whether you are students or not. The first thing is that whether you are employed or not. Then we make divisions, okay, for the person who are not employed and whether this person is unemployed or not in the labor force. So full-time students who don't have any part-time job, okay, then this person is not in the labor force. The other group, homemakers, okay. So the person who take care of home without any pay, without any job, full-time, let's say raising a kid or taking care of home, these people are not in the labor force. Okay? And smaller group, disabled. Okay? So for health reasons, cannot work. So obviously not employed and not looking for a job, and disabled people are also not in the labor force. Okay? The other, retirees. Okay? Done working. I don't want to work anymore. I'm 70 years old. Okay, I'm done working in my life. This person is not in the labor force. Okay? Questions? Got that? No? So you need to know these 1, 2, 3, 4 words. Okay? It's a very, very basic terms that you need to know. Especially that you should remember what unemployed means. Okay? It's not only not employed, but also looking for a job and able to work. Okay? Now, how do they know whether a person is employed or how do they know whether you are employed or not employed? What do they do? The Korean government and also any government in most of the countries, they conduct a survey. Okay? They do not check every person. They actually do a survey of sample households. Okay? So what they make is, basically what they do is the estimating the size of the labor force and number of people who are employed, unemployed. So they don't need to do it for every single individual. They do it only for the samples. So in Korea's case, we have a monthly survey, economically active population survey, or labor force survey. In many countries, they use labor force survey as the title. So economically active population survey, and what the survey does is they take a survey of the sample population age 15 or older living in the about 33,000 sample households across the country. Okay? So they do it every month. And then they publish the results in the website I showed you, yesterday, for example. Okay? And so from time to time, you will read the results of this survey in newspapers. Okay. So this is like a primary source of the statistics when we talk about what is the unemployment rate of the country, what is the employment rate. That unemployment rate, employment rate, we will just talk about it shortly. So most of the statistics about the labor force, we find it in this survey. Okay? Did anyone answer the survey? Is there anybody who answered this survey? Probably your parents. It's a thing that I find strange. No one I know has taken this survey. Somehow we have this information. But anyway, if you think about it, 33,000 is a very small number. Okay, so if you want more information about this survey, actually you can easily, just search the internet, and then you can find, for example, like their survey questionnaire. So if you read the survey questionnaire, then basically survey questionnaire designed to find out who's employed, who's unemployed, who's not in the labor force. That's the whole purpose. I mean, most of the purpose of the survey is this. And also there are informations about their a little bit of job history and those kind of things. Okay? And then you can, if you read the survey, then if you remember the definition of these terms, then you can easily figure out that how they make, how they categorize people into different groups. Okay, so I will show you a bunch of statistics out of this, and as I said, that Korean National Statistical Office website is an excellent source of this information. Okay, then a few seconds ago I said unemployment rate, employment rate, and these are the basic statistics. So there are three basic statistics. One is called labor force participation rate. So in short, we call it LFPR. Okay, let's use some shorthand notation. We use P for population. We use LF for labor force. We use NLF for not in the labor force. And we use E for employed. We use U for unemployed. Okay? Then it becomes much easier to remember these three things. First, labor force participation rate is LF divided by P. Okay? It shows that what percentage of people are either employed or unemployed. Okay? So these people are in the labor market. Okay? Either working or looking for work. Okay? So that is a very basic statistics, that LFPR. Second, the unemployment rate, you hear about it very often in newspapers. Unemployment rate, U divided by LF. U divided by LF. Okay? It's not U divided by P. It's U divided by LF. Okay? So the denominator, be careful. It's not P, it's LF. The third thing you hear probably as often as the unemployment rate is employment rate. Employment rate is not 1 minus unemployment rate. It's a very different number. Why? Because employment rate is defined as E divided by P, not E divided by LF. E divided by P. So E divided by P, so it means that it tells us the percentage of people who are working among the population. Okay? So it is possible, for example, that unemployment rate is low, but at the same time, employment rate is low as well, right? In what kind of case? If what statistic is low, then it can happen. If So under what situation, let's say, unemployment rate is low, but at the same time, employment rate is low? Then it should mean what? What number should be low as well? Which number? LFPR must be low, right? Because employment rate is low, okay, in two reasons. One is that there are lots of unemployed people who are looking for a job. But also at the same time, if there are a bunch of people who are not in the labor force, then employment rate is low. Okay? So if there are a bunch of people who are not in the labor force, okay, then it is possible that even if that unemployed people, the percentage of unemployed people among labor force is small, but since this one is big, so in whole population, these employed people may be small, proportionally the small percentage of the whole population as well. Okay? Make sense? Okay. So to know the current state of, let's say, Korean labor market, Korean labor force, so then we should look at these numbers. For example, what is the size of labor force? What is the size of not in the labor force? What is the size of employed people? What is the size of unemployed people? But at the same time, what are these three numbers? LFPR, UR, unemployment rate. In short, we call it UR. Okay? Employment rate, we call it ER. Okay? That's very common abbreviation of these three numbers, LFPR, UR, ER. Okay? And these statistics are, in a way, is standardized across the world. Okay? So if you look at, let's say, other country statistics, then if the statistic is about employment rate, then it must be E divided by P in any country. Okay? There may be a slight different definition for E or P. Okay, employed, they may have a slight different definition. But it should be that working for pay or profit, that is the same, but whether they define the person as like working for pay or profit, a little slightly different, but it should be almost the same. So there may be some differences in the definition of E or P, okay, but these LFPR, UR, and ER is internationally the same, how they define it. Okay? So it's easily comparable across the world. Okay. Questions? Okay. Okay, now let's look at the, let's say, current status of Korean labor market. So this is from the most recent statistic available, January 2015. Okay, so we did a monthly survey, right? So we have information about the January survey of this year. Okay, so first thing is that estimated size of population is 15 and above. This is estimated because obviously we have just only a sample survey, so we have to estimate them. It's about 43 million. Okay, so we have about 43 million people who are in P. Okay, population, and there are three categories. Employed, we have 59% are employed out of 43 million. Unemployed, 2%. And NLF is 39%. Okay? What is LFPR? LFPR should be what percent? 59? What is LFPR? It should be 61%, right? Because there are 59% employed, 2% unemployed, either employed or unemployed. They are in the labor force, so 61% is the LFPR. What is the employment rate? What is the ER? ER is 59%. Okay, so E divided by P. What is UR? 2 over, is it 2%? It is not 2%. Okay, it's a bigger number than 2%, because what you should do is a 2 divided by 61. Okay, LF. Okay. So we have about 60% of people who are working in this country. Okay, for those 15 or older. Yeah, we will look at the statistics more detail. Okay, so this is the labor force size, the number of people in the labor force from 1963 to 2014. So it shows about 50 years, about half a century trend. So we started as very small number. What is it? It's like less than 10 million when you started in 1963. Okay, and then it increases ever since. So now the total size is 26 million something, 26, 27 probably. Okay, so the labor force size for the past half a century more than doubled. Right? It's probably almost tripled, labor force size. So we have a lot more people working than 50 years ago. Okay, this is male, this is women. Okay, men and women. Okay, there is an interesting trend. The first thing is that men and women both have been increasing most of the time. And which group has increased faster? Men or women? It's women, right? You see the trend. This is man's trend and women's trend. I mean, you can see that here is in 1963, female labor force was very small number. I mean, all of it like probably about less than a third of the total labor force. But now, what is it? It's not half, but very close to half, I guess. Okay? So you can see that much faster increase happened for female labor force participation. Okay? So this labor force has increased for two reasons. It can increase for two reasons, right? One is what? One is that which size should increase? For the LF to increase, it's either population size itself has increased. Okay, we have more people, pretty much. Let's say, even if the LFPR is same, if population size has increased, then number of people in the labor force will increase. And the other factor must be the LFPR, right? So if even if the population size stay the same, if LFPR increase, then labor force size itself will increase. Okay? So two things can explain why the labor force size has increased. So P and LFPR. Okay? And in Korea's case, for the half a century, P has increased. Okay, obviously, we have a lot more people living now than 50 years ago in this country. Okay. Well, you may have heard some news that Korea's labor force size will decrease, right, at some point in the future. It's because population size is not going to increase much, or actually it's expected to decrease at some point because we are not having enough babies, actually, enough number of babies. Okay? At some point, we may talk about it. Okay? So in Korea's case, P is increasing. Also, if you look at the labor force participation rate, okay, for the same period, actually for men, labor force participation rate for men now is actually lower than LFPR 50 years ago. Okay? So for men's side, it has been increasing mostly because population size has increased for men. Okay? So up to, let's say, 1980, about 80% of men were in the labor force, either working or looking for a job. But now it's probably about 75%. Okay? So it has decreased slightly. Okay? How about the females? Okay, females is different. Females, what happened to LFPL for females? It has been increasing. Okay? So female LFPR has increased. Female labor force has increased because their population size has increased also at the same time. Very important factor is that their LFPL itself has increased from about a little more than 35% 50 years ago. Now it's about 50%. Okay? So more than 10 percentage point increase in the LFPR. Okay? So 50 years ago, about only 1/3 of women were working or looking for a job. Now about a half. Okay. One thing that is, I think I find it interesting is that from around the mid 1990s, women's LFPR is basically fixed. I mean, it's kind of stable around 50%. It has not increased much. Okay. I think this is a very interesting phenomenon. We should look at why this is stable at around 50%. Okay. And I think I will show you some international statistics later, because Korean LFPR of women is actually very low side. If you look at the other, especially developed countries, 50% is quite low LFPR. Okay. It's not, wow, we have half working. Actually, it's only half are working. Okay. But anyway, so LFPR has increased in Korea's history for the past, let's say, 50 years. This is very similar to other countries as well. Okay? The other countries pretty much the same. So women's labor force participation rate was generally quite low, okay, probably up to 1960s. Okay, then it has increased ever since. And most countries is actually way above 50%. Okay, so that's a thing that. So in one of the things that labor economists think about is that, one is that why the LFPR of women has increased, and the other question is why LFPR of men has decreased. In Korea's case, it's not that strong, but in some countries, decrease of LFPR of men are very strong. So that is actually very another interesting question that labor economists talk about. Okay. Now let's look at LFPR by gender and by age. So this is from the last year's statistic. Okay, the men and women are here. So see, we start from 15 to 19, and the oldest group 65 and older. Okay? So if you look at men's case, what happens? 15 to 19 is very low. Okay, like less than 10%. Why? Why? What do? They are in schools. They are going to schools. Okay, high school, middle school, high school. I think it's probably like a middle school, late middle school age. Okay, and then it increases. Okay, to 22, 24, it's about 50%. Okay, still pretty low. 25 to 29, it goes up to about 75%. Okay, and then 30 to 34, we hit more than 90%. Okay, so from age 30 to, let's say, 40, 50, 54, more than 9 out of 10 men are either working or unemployed. Okay? So around 90%, a little more than 90%. And then it starts dropping. Why? Because they start retiring. Okay? So if you look at 65 and older, we have, for men, LFPL is a little more than 40%. Okay? So they are going to school, they find a job, they work up to age 55 or 60 or 65. Some people are working way above age 65. Okay? So it sums up men's life. School, work, retire, die. See? There are only 4 stages in their life. Right? Yeah, I think it pretty much sums up the Korean man's life. So what's your stage? Your stage is school, and then you soon to be here for men, for male students here. And you spend about 30 years here, and then you do this. Okay? And at the end, you disappear. How about women? Okay, if you look at women, actually, what is interesting is up to 25 to 29, the pictures are very similar to men, right? So going to school, and slightly higher than men, but not that higher in terms of LFPL, while they are young, in their 20s. But what is interesting here is that it starts dropping, actually. Why? Because, or probably, we guess, the marriage or child care or whatever. Because of that, in Korean women's case, drop our labor force. The drop in the labor force, LFPR, is actually, it's not small, it's pretty big. It's probably about 15 percentage point. Okay? So it means like 15% of women who are previously in the labor force, either working or unemployed, they stopped working, okay, and stopped looking for a job. Okay? So that decrease happens up to 35 to 39, and it starts increasing again. Why? Why? So it is reasonable to interpret it as, let's say, child grows up, so they have, let's say, probably less responsibility at home, so they go back to some labor market, some people labor. So it goes up, to almost to 70%, to 45 to 49, and then what? And then it drops again. Okay? So in women case, it's not that simple, like men. We call it M-shape curve. Okay? Obviously, it looks like M, letter M. Okay? So it's M-shape. So this M-shape curve has this part, the dipping of labor force participation rate. So it means what? It means quite a substantial percentage of women, they have an interruption in their labor market experience. They drop our labor force and then go back in. Okay? So this type of thing, it seems, you think it's common, but actually, if you look at international statistics, this type of shape is not that common. See? This one shows the LFPR of women by age. Okay? It's not last year, but 2013, because OECD statistic has only up to 2013. This is Korea. This is the number you have seen. Basically, it's a different year, but the shapes are basically the same. How about the G7 countries? You see M shape? No, there is no M shape in the G7 countries. So G7 countries are what countries? United States, France, Germany, Canada, Japan. 2 more, you figure that out. Okay. But anyway, so G7 countries are the most developed countries in the world. Well, we can probably say. And in those countries, there is no such thing as this dipping. Indeed, for them, okay, the women's LFPR looks almost the same as men's LFPR. There is a slight difference, but there is no such thing as this. Okay? So if you compare them, actually Korean women their LFPR is much lower than G7 countries' LFPR in terms of level. Okay? And their shape is also different, especially this one. Okay? So in a sense, this dipping, this M shape, shows, in a way, the state of gender inequality of Korea. Why the women drop out of labor force? Because when they are married or they have a child, what happens to their husband? Okay, shouldn't they do something? So in G7 countries, in a lot of European countries, advanced countries, there is no such thing as this. Women just drop out of labor force only because they are married, only because they have a child. Okay. So there is a lot of in economic policy circles. There are a lot of talk about this M-shaped LFPR of women. Okay. And how do we, for example, because there are 2 problems with M-shapes. Because one is that obviously a lot of women are as well educated as men in Korea. So we spend lots of resources in educating our women, okay, from society's point of view. But obviously, a lot of women do not use their education, okay, raising a child. It's nothing wrong with it, but they may be, they may use it in different ways. They may contribute to society in different ways, but they just stay home too much. Okay, so it seems like there is a waste of resources. We are just wasting our well-educated women. Another thing is for the women themselves, when they drop out of labor force, let's say, and then they stay out of it for 5 to 10 years, when they get back to labor force, what happens to their jobs? They cannot find the job as good as their previous job. It would be extremely difficult. You get a job, the same quality of job, same quality of pay, as 10 years ago. You will have lots of difficulty in finding a job as good as you had before you dropped out of labor force. So it can be a quite difficult thing for women. Okay? And there are lots of things that arising from this. So I will talk about it a little bit more about that later. Okay? Okay, now we have looked at the labor force, LFPR, and then how about this one? Not in the labor force. What are they doing? Okay, if they are not working nor looking for work, what are they doing? And this is a January 2015 statistics. So in this labor force survey or economically active population survey, they ask questions that, what did you do last week? Okay, that is one of the first questions they ask. What did you do last week? Most of the time. There are a bunch of items. Okay, and then the first item is I worked. Okay, that's fine. And then I went to school and that kind of things. These group of people are not in the labor force. Then what they did do? Okay, the largest group are this group, homemaking. So 36%. Okay, So about 1/3 of people who are not in the labor force, they are homemakers. They say, I am a homemaker. The second largest group is students. Okay? Education or training. You may be in a school like this, university or in high school, but some may go to like a training school, job training school. Okay? It's trainees. That's about 1/4. Okay? So these two groups explains about 60% of not in the labor force. And then second largest group, third group is what? Old age. Okay? Like retirees. I'm old, so I'm not going to work. That's about 12%. What is the fourth group? Fourth group is interesting. I didn't do anything. Okay? I didn't do anything. There is no explanation. I didn't do anything. In Korean, I think the exact item is 쉬었음. Okay? That's what they check. Okay? I didn't do anything. Because there are lots of things they can check, like I was disabled, 30%. I did child care, not homemaking itself, but I took care of my baby or somebody else's baby. It is possible, but not paid. Child care, and then there are other things. Actually, there are a bunch of other things. Actually, a small number, so I did just lump it together. There are like 13, 14 items, but one item is I didn't do anything. Okay, 11%. You think about it; it's a huge number. See, total not in the labor force is 16.7 million. So 11% means that it's about close to 2 million. See? So about 2 million Koreans, they spend their every day doing nothing. Okay? Think about it. It's I don't know. Actually, there is lots of discussions about this group of people, especially among young people. Okay? Did you heard this term? NEET, right? NEET, we call it NEET, N-E-E-T. Okay? Do you know what these 4 letters means? Not in. First E is employment. Okay. Second E, education. Then T, training. Okay? So this need is not in employment, education, or training. We use this for young people. We don't call like our grandparents need. Okay? These grandparents obviously not in employment, education, or training, but we don't call them need. Okay? We call young people who are not in employment, education, or training, we call them need. Okay? And there is I think I read a recent report saying that those young people who are need more than 1 million in Korea. Okay? So that's the thing that we have to think about, what's happening. Okay? Especially when you look at the size of need in Korea has increased actually over time. Okay. So anyway, so these are the statistics. These are some, the activities. If we can call them activities, what these people not in the labor force are doing. Okay. Okay, so then let's look at the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate, the definition is unemployment rate is what? UR is, what is UR? what divided by what? U over LF. Okay? U over LF. So unemployment rate is one of the most cited statistics in economics. Okay? Because it shows the current state of the economy or labor market. Okay, let's look at all men. In Korea's case, it's quite stable actually for the whole of 2000. Around 4%. Okay? Now it's actually a little below 4%, like 3.8, 3.6. Before 2000, we have a higher unemployment rate, mostly because that we had a financial crisis at the end of 1997. So that number was pretty big, but the Korea has recovered, quite quickly actually. And then since 2000, we are all men around 4%, actually even lower than 4%. How about the women? Women also quite stable, around what? 3%, a little more than 3%. So female unemployment rate is slightly higher than male unemployment rate. Okay? It's mostly because their LFPR is low. Okay? So it seems like women who don't expect, able to find a job, they just simply drop out labor force. Okay? It's probably what's happening. So this is for all people. How about younger people, like your group, 20 to 29? For men, it has been stable around 9%. Okay? Last year it went up to more than 10%. Okay? So that means what? 1 out of 10 men, 20 to 29, they don't have a job and they look for a job. Okay? But anyway, still it's around 9%. Well, how about women? Lower, you see, about 6%, up and down, around the 6%. It was also higher in 2014. It's 7 something. Okay. Are these numbers high? Depends on who you ask. Okay, if you compare these numbers to some European countries, it's still quite low, around 10%. It's not a bad number, actually. If you look at only the numbers, unemployment rate, it's not a bad number. Especially you look at all men and all women, it's very low, like 4% or less than 3.8. These are, in some countries, this is the number that they dream of. Because 4% of people who are unemployed, it pretty means what? Almost everyone who wants to work are working. Because you cannot have zero unemployment. Think about it. Zero unemployment is impossible. Because at any given point of time, there will be people who probably try to change jobs. Okay? These people are all unemployed. So it is not possible to have zero unemployment rate. So it depends on the country, but traditionally, around 3%, 3 to 4% of unemployment is considered to be almost perfect employment. Almost everyone is working. So it seems like it's a very good number. Okay? For young people, it's higher. Is it a problem? Young people have higher unemployment rate than other groups. Should we be concerned about it? Should we be concerned about it? What do you think? Yeah, probably you don't know yet. Okay. Thing is, if you look at the statistics around the world, young people do have higher unemployment rate. Why? Because it's think of young people, 20 to 29. They finish their school. So they have to find a job. So everyone will go through unemployment stage. Unless you just find a job, like while you are in school, so you just finish your school and next day you go to your workplace, then you are just going straight from not in the labor force to employed. But it's not exactly not in the labor force because you should have some job search while you are at school. So every young person, in a sense, will go through a stage of job search. That's the stage of unemployment. So the unemployment rate for young men should be necessarily higher than other groups, the older people, obviously. Okay? So a higher unemployment rate is not a problem. If it is too much, the difference is too much, then it's going to be a problem. But in Korea's case, it's not exactly a problem. So unemployment rate itself, in Korea's case, it's not that bad, I should say. Okay, it's okay. These numbers are quite okay. Okay, for some countries, these numbers look fantastic. Yeah. Are you happy? No? That means what? You guys will have a job, pretty much. Well, you probably have different ideas. It seems like it's very difficult the job market. Now, the thing is, if you look at employment rate, ER, the picture looks a bit different. First thing is that all men, it's around 70%. It's pretty much stable for the past 35 years. 70%. Didn't change much. Ups and downs, but 70%. It's pretty, stable number. How about the women? All women, it starts around 40%. Now it's about 50%. Women's unemployment rate is pretty low, right? So LFPR and ER are pretty much the same for women case. Okay. For men's case, it's also, but so about 50%. Okay. So employment rate for women has increased, okay, over time, but it didn't change much since 2000. How about young men and young women? Young women, it has been increasing. It's about 40%, but now it's around 60%. So for young women, 20 to 29, 6 out of 10 are working. Okay. How about men? Men's different story. Young man, what happened? It has been decreasing ever since. Since 1980, it was around 78%. Now it's what? Now actually it's lower than women's women's ER. It's about 55%. Okay. And if you look at only, for example, 2000, it has been decreasing all the time, almost. So at the beginning of 2000, it's around 65%. Now it's only about 55%. So about 10 percentage point decrease in the employment rate for young men. So what's happening? There you are. Unemployment rate is stable, or their employment rate is decreasing. So what does it mean? Another number should be changing. LFPL should be what? Increasing or decreasing? Should be decreasing for men, for young men. Okay? So what's happening? So when you look at the unemployment rate, it seems like, it didn't change much for the past 10 years. Okay? But if you look at employment rate, especially for men, it's actually decreasing. Okay? For women, it did not increase. For young women, is also slightly decreasing, you know, for young women. See, it's not increasing. So obviously, for the past 10 years, the Korean young men and women have had decreasing employment rate. So smaller and smaller percentage of people are employed. So why? Because their LFPR is decreasing. Why? One reason. There is one obvious reason why the LFPR is decreasing. They more are going to universities. Okay? Then their LFPR will be decreasing. So LFPR is decreasing, and then their employment rate is decreasing. So going to more education, going for more education, it will necessarily decrease employment rate. So that is partly the reason. Okay. But another reason, as I said, is that this NEET group has been increasing. Okay. So this part is not that good. The NEET group has been increasing. So going to school, more not going to school, probably it's okay in the long run. But the NEET is increasing as well. So that is another issue that we have to think about. So here that if you look at the Korean statistics, that's what happens for the, let's say, 10 years. So fewer, smaller and smaller percentage of young people are working. So that's why that we, the Korean government and societies in general, they talk about this youth employment issues and young people's youth employment issues. Korea's employment rate is not high. Okay? So Korea's employment rate is about 65%, I think. If you look at the other countries, a lot of countries way above the 70%. The highest, Iceland, like 80%, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, Netherlands, all these countries like Japan. Japan's higher, employment rate of Japan is higher. Okay? And United States higher, Brazil higher, Israel, these countries. Those who are lower employment rate is France, almost the same, Slovenia, Colombia. So these group of countries are not doing that well. Okay, countries doing very well, generally have higher employment rate than Korea's. So Korea's employment rate is not high overall. It's actually kind of low side. For your group you want to be compared to, we are low side. So that's why the Korean government, the president has, some time ago talked a lot about employment rate increasing to 70%, those kind of things. Because 70% seems to be a pretty good number. So this is one of the reasons why we are concerned about employment rate of Korea. It's internationally, it's a low side. That means what? It's like we are kind of wasting our resources, somehow. And one reason that our employment rate is low, it's because women's employment rate is very low in Korea's case. Look at. So this is women's employment rate. You see, the bunch of countries much higher. Okay. So Brazil, Ireland, Belgium, Portugal, Luxembourg, right? So a lot of countries. Japan, even Japan is much higher employment rate than Korean women's employment rate. Okay. So if you look at it, then Korea's employment rate is low side. So one reason why we are concerned, especially for women and especially for young people. Okay. So OECD average 65%, Korea is 64%. 20 to 24, 55, Korea is 43. You see? there is about 12 percentage point difference. So young people group, 70 to 69. For women, if you look at women, generally low side, okay, except for this, 25 to 29, OECD is 64, Korea is 68. Okay? But overall, it's lower because that older groups have lower employment rate. For men, overall, it's okay, 73, 75. So Korea's employment rate for men is actually higher, except for younger group. Okay? So 20 to 24, OECD 60, Korea is 38. And 80, 70, about 20 percentage point difference. No, about 10 percentage point difference. Okay? So a lot of it is explained by the going to school. So higher percentage of Korean young men actually going to universities. They go to schools than compared to other countries. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. It's difficult. It's difficult to say, I would say. Maybe a good thing. But it seems like there are a lot of people thinking that too high percentage of people are going to universities. Okay? So the Korean government has been talking about the lowering that percentage to a number. Wow, I covered only half of the labor force statistics. Okay. Yeah. I think we should stop here today, and then next week we will start with the some more statistics, and then move on to the model of labor supply. Okay.